One time, we successfully mated a bulldog with a Shih Tzu.
Really? That's weird.
Yeah, we called it a bullshit.
Okay, is this guy just making it up as he goes? Yep. Is it all BS? Yep. Here's Big Nate with some more BS, because it's BSing with Big Nate.
Tonight, faith, as if you didn't know, but things change, so sit back, enjoy the show. It's better if you don't know when it's a crime, whether high or low. Go on, give back some borrowed time.
That was The Slang, Nothing Lasts Forever, on another edition of BS with Big Nate. And first and foremost, very excited for this episode. I've got to bring in someone that I've known for a little while, and a very new friend to me. But we're going to talk about The Slang and this track. But first and foremost, Felix, I've been dying to get you on here. I think you are who I originally reached out to try and get Crashing Atlas on BS with Big Nate, and now here we are, almost a year and a half later, and you're finally here. So thank you.
Yeah, and it's a pleasure.
I'm just immensely thrilled. like I was telling John, kind of before we took the air, before you even showed up to the meeting, is that you kind of seem like the glue that holds a lot of things together. You seem very organized, very well put together, very thoughtful in everything you do. So thank you, for being on time. I did get the email notification. You were like 5 or 6 minutes early to the meeting, and then I was still getting everything set up. So appreciate that punctuality. John, of course, here on time as well. John, I want to welcome you to the show as well. And I'm very excited for us to get into that track and get into the slang. I think the way to start is with the track itself, and then we'll kind of go backwards from there and dig into the slang. But dig into the slang. I don't. That's another whole nother topic. But that track to me, it really stands out as something that not a lot of bands are doing these days, because to me it's very raw, it's kind of emotional, it's sincere. So I kind of want to, of course, for the most part, it feels like you guys are a duo, a two-piece, if you will. What is that dynamic like? Because I mean, with a whole band, you've got a lot of people to lean on, but for something like this, it's Felix and John.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think everything you said about Felix is at the beginning was true, right? I think he is kind of the center and the glue of a lot of different things. And, but it's not just knowing how to produce and knowing how to be in the studio. But the thing I like when working with Felix is he's that voice that's like, it could be a little bit better. And when you're writing songs on your own, you don't always, you kind of reach a point where you're like, that's really good enough, and Felix, and he has a real nice way of doing it. If you pitch an idea to Felix and he's not really sold on it, he'll go, yeah, that could be cool. And then like, you got to come up with a better idea. You can do better. So it's a very nice way. And he's good at that, because you do have to kind of get through the bad ideas to get to some of the ideas that work a little bit better. But you mentioned two people in the room. That's enough. I think I feel like I've never felt like, oh, we need to bring in somebody else. We're running dry on ideas, and the times where we have brought in a third or a fourth person to kind of do a writing session, you almost turn off parts of yourself because there's enough going on that you can't, express everything that you need to express, or it's working without you and you don't need to step in. But with two people, you get stuck and then the other person has to help out.
So another thing I feel like it's important to discuss, with this track, with that kind of style and bringing another person in, it is important to me that people know kind of the background. So how did you and Felix become, kind of intertwined on this journey?
Felix, I'll let you, if you want to take this start.
Well, so John and I guess we've probably known each other, 5 or 6 years at this point now. It's been a little while.
It's been a while.
And so the funny thing is that I met John through Nick from CA now. And so Nick went to CA and then I went to the Slang, kind of like an agent trade deal type situation.
Yeah, and I think we were briefly in the same cover band for like a day.
Yeah,
like
one
Felix, I think, holds a distinction for the briefest moment in a band ever. Because I think we all got together. We were doing this cover band thing, and we all got together on like a Saturday. And by Tuesday, they're like, "Yeah, Felix is gonna, do something else." So like 2-3 days. So, we didn't even practice.
I mean, and that is something that kind of. I mean, I don't want to say every band, every musician kind of has those Spinal Tap experiences. So, Felix, would you say that's your most Spinal Tap moment?
Maybe. I guess part of it is sometimes you got to get out there and feel things out. And if I think being in a band is one of those situations where, like, you're going to be investing your time. So you have to be wise as to what you want to invest your time in, and I have a lot of friends that are in like 2 or 3 different bands, and like, man, they run themselves ragged. And I feel like for me, kind of a goal is to have just one main thing that you're focusing on, and trying to get good at that one thing instead of branching out too much. So that's a
I,
current philosophy.
it's really interesting to me that you sit here and tell me that's your philosophy when I know that that's not entirely true. You seem to be one of those people who's kind of always doing something, always working on something. You can't necessarily sit still for very long. Again, this is my impression from the outside. I'm not interacting with you necessarily in your daily life. Um, that does kind of bring me to a question where, with some of the other stuff you have a more active role in producing, whereas with the slang, like you're kind of down there in the trenches, but you do have that ability and that mindset. So how do you kind of bring that to the table, and how does that affect your dynamic with John?
Um, I mean, you do bring up a good point in me helping other bands in a sense. I guess for me, I see that more as like kind of the producing and, you know, hopefully helping the success of the band in a way. Because, the more successful the band is, the more successful I am. And, I think in this area, a big focus of mine is just trying to elevate the level of music around here, because uh having the appreciation of working with like people in Nashville and other cool cities in the US, you realize that we're a little bit lacking here. And I know John will have some words on this as well, but kind of our thought is trying to grow that scene a little bit, get everyone a little bit better, and so more people will appreciate live music and support local bands.
And so, John, I'm going to pose the same question to you. What are your thoughts on the dynamic with Felix?
Well, I mean, your instinct was right. Felix has 3 shows this weekend, none of which are with the slang. So like he's a busy guy, right? But I'm going to go to at least 2 or 3 of the 2 of the 3, maybe all 3 of the shows. So they're all friends and we all hang out. And so I think Felix's attitude is spot on. It's just, you're kind of raising the level. And if one person wins, we all win. And that really is true with local music. And I've seen scenes where it gets a little competitive and you're just, you're fighting for the scraps, and that's not good. But in terms of, how it works with the slang and Felix and I, our dynamic, one thing that's really interesting is we ended up years before we knew each other, when I still lived in Ohio and he was living in Maryland, we ended up working with a lot of the same session players in Nashville. I had gotten introduced to them, the people in Nashville, just through a producer named Russ Long that I reached out to for our second EP. Felix had reached out to him to do some stuff. And so it's interesting that we ended up working with the same people. So when we got together, we're like, well, I know a drummer, I know this. And we tend to really like session players. And I think, one of the dynamics that I really like is that it's not that Felix and I can't play the parts. It's that it would take us a little bit longer and it would take us a lot more time to get the part in the sound. And we just take all that effort and we put it all in the songwriting. And we just say, hey, we got to write the song. Like nobody can do that for us, or at least not, it hasn't yet. So we put all the focus in that. And then once we think the song is strong, then we, work with some session players to help fill it out.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because there is something I've noticed that it does seem like the primary focus is, kind of the song feels real. It feels fully fleshed out, because maybe it's not that it's that you're not getting bogged down in the mire of, all right, so I got to play this drum track, I've got to play this bass track, I've got to sing, I've got to, like, you can focus on like the actual feel of the song and you can kind of see it build out. Whereas, it's kind of like that bird's eye view versus the on the ground view.
Yeah, and this might be Felix's, he could definitely expand upon this, but I mean, I think any song on the album has 80 to 120 tracks in the DAW. And so, that includes doubles and stuff, but like it can be very overwhelming to get just the right sound for one of 80 to 120 tracks that you're trying to do if you don't do it every day. And so, it just kind of comes down to where do you want to spend your time and money? And it is quite literally more effective and efficient to pay somebody to do it, because our standard's going to always be up here. And then the person that can hit that standard on the first or second take versus me doing it 8 to 10 times, you just save that time and money and just put it elsewhere.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a couple of interesting documentaries that deal with exactly that concept. I'm thinking of Hired Gun and Wrecking Crew, both dealing with
Yeah, both are great.
session musicians, and you don't realize that's kind of with everything that the way the music industry kind of works is that's kind of the backbone of the music industry, and it's not necessarily as appreciated as it should be. It's almost like treated as if it's a shameful thing, but I think it's absolutely, like you said, it allows you to really kind of direct the creativity. Think of like a symphony.
Mhm.
The conductor, you've got all of these pieces who are kind of just moving in and playing this part.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And there was something else you mentioned, John, that kind of stood out to me. Felix mentioned it as well. Is the music scene in that DC, Northern Virginia, I guess Southern Maryland. I don't actually know what that area is technically called, but the area of Maryland around DC, the DC Baltimore metropolitan area, is that it's amazing to me that every band kind of puts that on their tour list, but from my experience, there's not necessarily that many bands that are coming out from that area, and it's nice to see something like particularly my experience with Slang, Crashing Atlas, like you guys all kind of interact with each other and uplift each other, so much so that you've actually a friend of yours, if you will, Jonathan, has been trying to provide some vocal advice. So I want a little background on Jonathan.
Yeah. Yeah. So Jonathan is a well, first of all, he's an industry pro, if there ever was
He's a
one.
legend.
So yeah, he's been a vocal coach and trainer for over 20 years. And he typically works with 3 or 4 clients at a time. And in the past, he's worked with George Jones. I don't know, Felix, help me out.
Well, you got all the Kennys.
Yeah, George Strait and Boy George, I think, was the other one, and all the Kennys. Yeah, Kenny Rogers, Kenny Loggins, and Kenny Chesney. And he does. He finally got pulled into doing vocal reaction videos. So he did a vocal reaction video of Crashing Atlas, and it was, I think it was the best vocal reaction video of Crashing Atlas that I've ever seen.
Well,
He really to it.
I'm gonna be honest, it's the only one I've seen, and if you're gonna watch one, it's the one to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And just if you can put a little birdie on Jonathan's shoulder, we definitely need more of that.
Yeah, it's rumored that he's recorded 4 or 5 other vocal reaction videos, but he's still on AOL, so the uploading is very challenging for him. He's he's on dial-up.
Introduce him to the world of the internet. I think that would revolutionize his life. I also want to talk about the Slang sound as a whole, because there are some very obvious influences to me. And I could be dead wrong, but this is what I hear when I listen. There are parts of this track that feel like The Killers post Hot Fuss. And then there are some parts that kind of have like an early Cure vibe. So those are the 2 I'm picking out. Very well could be wrong. I just want to know if like subconsciously or what, when you guys are songwriting, what you're looking to, or if you're not looking towards anything and it accidentally happened.
Yeah, Felix, do you want to start on this?
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying I feel like he kind of hit the nail on the hammer with that one. And in the sense of that was a big influence of definitely John and I on a lot of these tracks. And there was a big debate as to when we were starting to put together our record. The question we get asked the most is, who do you sound like? And I feel like this first track is definitely a little more straightforward than some of the other ones. But we had quite a hard time, as I'm sure John can explain later. But it's kind of reassuring hearing that we're hitting some of the tiers that we were trying to shoot for.
Well, I mean, that I'm glad I hit the nail on the head. I feel like whenever I qualify, and I'm going to ask you, this is kind of a one for the cheap seats here, is I always want to make sure I'm kind of trying to be thoughtful in my questioning and in my analysis, and I don't want to necessarily offend. and sometimes I'll find myself saying key phrases, and I feel like I added a qualifier there with the Killers post Hot Fuss, and I feel like I need to denote that Hot Fuss is a very different album than, like, let's say Sam's Town or Sawdust.
Absolutely.
To me, Sam's Town, Sawdust, like everything after, is very much more sincere and real feeling.
Yeah, I think for Hot Fuss is a great album. It's probably their best-selling album, right? But it feels like an album of a lot of singles that are all really good songs. Whereas, you know, when you get into Sam's Town, you clearly get the Americana stuff coming in, a little bit of Springsteen vibe. And then, you know, so I feel like you start to get more album vibes after Hot Fuss. And they're all great albums. I mean, you know, this is not anything to debate, but yeah, but you really highlighted the influences perfectly, you know. Yeah.
Well, that's, I mean, I'm glad to hear that. I'm very excited. I do have to ask, you know, kind of before we wrap this up and move along, what is next for the Slang?
Okay, well, there's if we're looking into the more of the immediate future,
I want immediate, and then I want 20 years down the line.
Okay.
Like, just give me your whole plan. I know you've got it written down.
We got a 5-year plan. No, in the immediate future, we're going to be releasing one single every month for, I think, the next 3 months, with the record followed after that in September. Correct me if I'm wrong. 24, is that the day, John?
Yeah, September 24th. Yep.
So, but on the record, I think that you're going to find some diversity in the musicianship and songwriting, and even the sound. You know, I think this first track is the first track because it's the most, I don't want to say easy to understand, but it's probably most straightforward in terms of the sound. The second track, you know, can be a little more nostalgic sounding in some of the tones that we use. And the third track may even be considered more of like a modern country feel in some of the sounds. So definitely curious to see how people react to this new record. I know that for me personally, coming into the Slang and hearing the songs, it had a very like 90s 2000s kind of rock sound, but with this new record, we tried to keep a little bit of the same, but also trying to modernize just a little bit and kind of how we approached it. So definitely curious to hear people's thoughts on this. Looking into the future, I think John might be a better person to answer some of these questions with our 2022 and beyond plans.
Yeah, I mean, this is our first album. This is our first full length, and I can easily explain why. It's really tough to do an album. It's tough to write cohesive songs and that you feel are good enough, and it's expensive, you know, and so you know, albums are tough things. But the thing that's nice about an album is, at least in our minds, we were freed up to go, okay, they don't all have to be singles. We can take a left turn, or we can do this. And then, you know, we got to kind of figure out how it works into the other songs. But you can get these, you know, kind of oddball moments that you certainly wouldn't, at least I wouldn't, you know, kind of creatively go places that you wouldn't go if it was an EP, because that's still within striking distance of like, hey, you know, they all have to be singles. They all have to hit, you know, really well. At least that's what you try to do. So an album, I enjoyed that. So I think the future is really, I'm excited about it because we've been going completely vertical. So if we need to write the songs, we write the songs. You know, if we need to, if we do need to get session players, we'll do that, like we talked about earlier. But you know, if you listen to the demos that we played on and what the session players did, you know, there's a straight line to that. They just played it, you know, faster and better in terms of the tones and the rhythms. And so I think we're also Felix has been getting pretty good with the camera. So we've been starting to film our own videos. Now, the videos that we have right now, that was just a little bit too much of a bite to kind of take on with our timeline. And so we hired a great director named Audio Ash, and he filmed 5 videos that were fantastic. But I think video stuff and kind of expressing ourselves in that way is something that we would do to support other songs in the future. So yeah, I'm excited to kind of see where it goes, but we just kind of have a DIY approach to everything, really.
I love that attitude. I thank you two gentlemen for joining me. The Slang, Nothing Lasts Forever, out now. Go ahead, give him some follow, give him some love. John, if you talk to Jonathan, tell him we are very much so looking forward to his future. We are, of course, very much so looking forward to what's coming next from The Slang, and can't wait for that album in September.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks for having us, and we'll let Jonathan know.